I'd like to call the June 1st, 2023 Utility Advisory Commission regular meeting to order. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We have 3 commissioners present, so we do have a quorum this evening. Move on to public comments. We would entertain any public comments at this time. Seeing no one is coming forward, we will move on to the consent agenda. All matters listed within the consent agenda have been distributed to each member for study. These items are considered to be routine and will be enacted upon by one motion with no separate discussion. If separate discussion is desired on an item, that item may be removed from the consent agenda and placed on the regular agenda. Standing approval of the minutes as written for the April 6, 2023 meeting of the Utility Advisory Commission.
I move to accept the consent agenda as written.
I have one issue with it before we do that. On the discussion items, you have, I think it's just a typo, where the definition of SAIFI, S-A-I-F-I, is the same as the one before, and it should read the average number of instances. Can I get a motion to approve the consent agenda with the correction of the one item?
So moved. Seconded.
So I have a motion to approve the consent agenda with the exception noted by Stauffer, seconded by Augustine. All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. Seeing as there's no old business, we will move on to new business. The first item is to consider a recommendation to the City Council to award a contract for the gas turbine motor control center replacement. Hello, Gons.
Good evening, Chairman, Commissioners. This item, I'll give you a quick background, which is stated here. Last year, there was a recommendation by the UAC a recommendation for UAC to City Council to upgrade the control system for the gas turbines. So that recommendation was approved with City Council, so a new control system was installed for Unit 1 and 2. Part of the package that came with that control upgrade was a replacement of the motor control center, better known as MCC. So the gas turbines, they have 2 motor control centers. A motor control center is basically an assembly of one or multiple enclosed sections that they have a common bus and is used to start stop motors or any electric device. The existing MCC was built in 1970s, and we are pressed to get any parts, or if we find parts there, the cost is pretty high. So it needs to be replaced. So the HPI, I personally thought when we were doing the upgrade for the controls that the cost of the MCI from HPI was too high. So they, upon request from us, they were trying to give us a better proposal. We're talking June of last year. We waited until the end of 2022, 2023, nothing. So I went ahead and issued a request for proposal for the replacement of the MCC. That was done on March 14th, 2023. It was published in the legal records, Drexel Plan Room, and in the city website. A total of 8 companies requested the information. Part of the proposal was for the company to actually come to the power plant and visit what we have, so they have an idea what needs to be replaced. So there were 3 companies that visited the facility. However, only one company submitted a proposal, and that proposal is from HPI. As part of the purchasing policy, a selection committee was formed to review the proposal. It consisted of myself, Dave Napik, which is a community development director, Kellen Headley, he's the public works, and Jeff Lemire, who's the utilities manager, who is sitting behind me. So we met on April 5th to review the proposal. I took the selection committee to the actual control room so they can see what an MCC is and what's so special about the MCC. So after a brief discussion, the committee unanimously agreed to accept the HPI proposal. Some of the things that were discussed and some of the reason was the proposed MCC is compact and will fit on the existing footprint. Some of the other MCCs, although we don't have nothing to compare it to, but there is one from Eaton, which is similar, but it will have to be mounted in 3 separate locations. Actually, it will be all over the control room. The current proposal meets and exceeds the current MCC specifications. The other issue was due to the closed interface between motor control center and the new turbo control system. We have to make sure that interconnection, the wiring is done correctly to make sure that it's gonna function. And there's a lead time of 50 weeks to get the MCC. Now, so I took a look at the proposal from HPI from the electric engineer perspective. The current MCC has 3 things that make it very unique. It has a power bus that is 120 volts AC. They have a common bus that is 125 volts DC. And they have a common bus that is 480. So you have 3 things inside the existing motor control center. The thing that got so much close to the Eaton motor control center, which is, I have a specifications, doesn't have all 3 buses. It only has the AC. Then to start DC motors, we will have to buy something else to mount it somewhere else so we can actually start the emergency loop oil pumps, which is your backup in case your main oil pump fails. And then the DC panel with different breakers to feed different relays or controls in the control room, that will have to be mounted separately also. So in order to use a different motor control center besides the one proposed by HPI, it will require getting a engineering firm to do the engineering. How do you install this motor control center? So you have a engineering cost, then you have a installation cost, and then there is always the risk that if it's not done properly, the controls won't work because they're not, they were not connected correctly during the installation. So based on that, I think it makes sense to go with HPI. So the staff recommendation is to accept the HPI proposal.
So I had a couple of questions based off of the fact that it is just one proposal, like you're saying, and all of those underlying factors that you mentioned. So, I'm still trying to get up to speed on the whole way that our utility system here works. On the roadmap, have we already replaced the turbines, or is that coming up on the roadmap? I forget where we fall on that. Aren't we gonna either recently have done or just looking to sometime in the next 10 years replace the turbines?
So the turbine, as they stand right now, will probably last for another 7 to 10 years.
So that's a future, because I think when I was reading one of the master plans, it mentioned that was a potential item that we would be looking at in the future.
Correct. So there's a CIP in 2032, 2035 to replace them or to add additional generation.
So the question that brings up is, obviously that's what, 10 years in the future. So $250,000 now to continue operating the ones we have. Will that be compatible with the new ones, or will that be, like, when we're looking at the new ones, will that be a complete rebuild? And we can't, as you say, the previous ones were built in the 70s. So is it something we can then use to operate the new turbines, or is it going to be a complete rebuild?
If we replace the existing turbines, which are marked frame 5, also MS 5000, if we can replace them with something that a lot newer, we can use the existing system.
And then that would be, because you say there's 3 different pieces to this MCC that makes it so unique for this proposal. We're not pigeonholing ourselves with saying we need to get it because that's what our current equipment takes, and so now we're buying something that then will not be future compatible. You're saying it will be future compatible with
As
that,
long as the gas turbine remain under the same model or series, yes,
which may or may not happen.
correct.
Okay, thank you. Those were my questions.
Then the other piece of information, if we cannot get credit for the capacity of those units, we will have to pay, right now the cost is $2.5 per kilowatt. So rounding numbers, we have 2 units that can put out 30 megawatts. If we have to replace that capacity on the market, buying paper capacity, that will be 30,000 kilowatts times 2.5. So that's about $70,000 a month that you will have to pay to get that capacity from the system.
The same capacity that we're able to generate with the system that
Correct.
we currently have.
So if they say we don't have the capability of running those units, then we'll have to pay $70,000 a month for that capacity.
So this project easily pays for itself within 1 year, regardless of if we're able to use
Correct.
it in 10 years with the new device.
Correct.
Got you. Thank you.
Then I attached some pictures of the MCC so you have an idea what it looks like. And you will see it's very compact, and you have the 3 buses, the AC, DC, and the 480 AC. So it's a very unique motor control center for that gas turbine. So HPI is replacing it with the same parts and components using the same footprint.
To eliminate that additional need for engineering to make sure
Correct.
that it's installed correctly.
And they have done their work before in other units in Texas and one in Ohio. And we visited both facilities early last year.
Will it be much of a hardship with the 50-week lead time?
So right now if we wait longer, it will be another. So that was one of the points that we need to make a decision so we can order the MCC as soon as possible. So it'll be in service hopefully next spring.
But I mean, in the meantime,
I mean, we can make it work, but it's getting very hard to find the components. For example, there was a defective 120 DC overload. It's a device that big, probably 20 years ago it was $20, $30 to buy. Right now, the same overload that is not made anymore cost us $800 to replace it. And it's a tiny device. And then it's the same with other, you open those, the doors of the cabinets, you will see relays, they don't make them anymore, so everything will have to be replaced. And there is not much room to install newer equipment because everything was done according to those devices and specifications.
are there any other questions?
I didn't follow at the beginning, so I'm gonna just ask this for my clarity. So a year ago, we did a control systems upgrade, and the MCC was not a part of that?
Correct,
Okay, and,
because I believe the cost was too high.
so a year ago, did they bid the MCC as well at that time?
Correct.
And we de-scoped it?
Yep.
Okay. At that time, was that price tag more than it is today?
It was less.
What?
It was less.
It was less than.
It was $250.
Okay. I know, cost of materials, a year from now, everything's gone up, so, okay. Are there any significant changes to the MCC that they proposed a year ago compared to now?
I think I don't have all the model number, but it's basically the same thing.
Okay.
And the reason it's probably the same thing because they installed this type of MCC in other installations, other facilities. So they're familiar with what they have.
Gotcha.
I don't think they want to venture into a different brand and then they have to re-engineer everything.
Okay.
And this is the same firm that originally bid the MCC
Correct.
a year ago? And then I had one more question just for tangentially related to this item. As far as our capacity within our own, our sphere of control, if you will, as far as running the grid that we operate our customers. If we were to be completely removed from the grid, what kind of a percentage are these turbines providing for our customer base? Does that make sense?
So right now the peak load is about 40 megawatts. Both units can produce 26, so it'll be shy of 14. So that's about probably 70%. We can provide 70% of the.
Because you wouldn't want to operate them higher than maybe a 70% threshold? Or?
No, we just couldn't.
Oh, 70% of the current
Capacity.
Gotcha. Do we have the capability of running 100% of our customer load?
No.
If for some reason something were to happen to the grid and it went down?
No, we only can provide 60, 70%.
Is that something that has been discussed? I know that's not the scope of tonight, but just kind of throwing it out there as I become more familiar with things. I know the last couple of years of cascading grid failures in Texas and other places have illustrated the importance of having microgrids, if you will, while still being tied into the larger grid. Is that a discussion topic, and where would be the appropriate place for me to maybe
So the CIP that was for replacing or adding new generation is to consider replacing the gas turbines with something that will give us the capacity we need, or adding additional turbine or turbines to give us the 40 megawatts that we need.
So that would be discussed in the long-term CIP.
So I think 2017, in 2006, this I like to go back to history here. 2006, the electric utility did a master plan. It was done in anticipation to the intermodal. So there were a lot of projects that were contemplated that they were never executed because the intermodal was acquired by Edgerton. So in 2017, using the same model, I updated that master plan for a 5-7 year outlook. Based on my projections, we needed a upgrade of T2 transformer in sub 1. Then we needed a additional substation, which we're working on. And there were some other minor projects. Looking at what's coming down the pike with different projects that will be all over the place, I told the city administrator we probably need to do a more comprehensive master plan that would include if we need additional generation or not. And if not, what are the other options if we don't increase our generation capacity? So that will be hopefully presented to the UAC in June, July, the proposal.
So that
So
thank you for the context. That kind of answers my question. So that is something that's being currently considered in the long-term plan. Obviously, it
Correct.
takes many years to implement things to have a $30 million price tag associated with them. So that's something that will come forward, and then we can have those discussions and make those proposals to City Council at that point.
Yep.
Thank you for all of that. Sorry for.
And something else I wanted to add is some cities, they want to have their own generation, that if you have a blackout or you get removed from the grid, you can generate your own electricity. Since I've been here in 7 years, and I think over the past 20 years, we have never had to crank those gas turbines to supply the energy needed for the city, which means that the system we have is very reliable.
And I think we saw that in the winter storm as far as our region fared a lot better than most of the country because of the way that Evergy has been running their system, it seemed like.
So it brings the question, do you want to spend $30 million on gas turbines that you probably won't need to run? Or you want to look at a different option like having paper capacity or other types of PPAs?
Right. And I think those are all good subjects for the future. But thank you.
But that's coming in the near future.
Right.
Any more questions? I'd entertain a motion for this item.
Oh, make a motion. To approve, new business item number 1, sorry. Long name.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, motion made by Augustine to recommend to City Council to enter into a contract with HPI Energy for the Motor Control Center, MCC, replacement for a lump sum of $298,000. Motion seconded by Stoffer. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. We'll move on to business item number 2.
Before Jeff comes to the podium, background on this item. In 2017, line maintenance the staff was increased from 5 to 10. So there was not enough room in the existing public workshop for the additional 5 workers. So we went ahead and proposed buying a mobile office building. The UAC said, we will approve that building, or we will recommend it if you guys try to build something more permanent within 5 years. So after discussion with the city administrator, a CIP was created for a new building to replace that temporary office building. And that's what, that brings us to this item tonight.
So the new business item number 2, consider a recommendation to the city council to award a progressive design build phase 1 contract for the Gardner Utilities Building Project number WW8002.
Yes, good evening, Chairman and Commissioners. Jeff Lemire, I'm the Utilities Manager for the Utilities Department. We're here to present this Phase 1 design build contract proposal with Lloyd Builders, Inc. and Finkel and Williams Architecture Team. In January of 2023, we went out for requests for qualifications, and on March 3rd, we received 3 proposals from 3 different design teams. The selection committee reviewed those documents and then held interviews with all 3 groups, and then unanimously selected Lloyd Builders, Inc. and Finkel Williams Architecture Team as the team to move forward with negotiations. So this phase 1 design build is a contract that we used, a replica of the Hillsdale Water Treatment Plant expansion project that was just completed 2 years ago now. So all of this documentation is, identical to that, just for ease of design and moving forward. This project has kind of changed since the original line maintenance only building. As you can see, that's kind of what we have in the image in front of you in blue. And then the pink is what is proposed for a phase 2, or to move the electric distribution guys over to this site as well. Multiple times in the past 5 years, people have come to the city administrator's office and asked to purchase the building that Bruce and his utility line or electric distribution guys are in. So we looked at that, and we looked at this site and how could we move all of the utility department employees into one location. So that's kind of what we've come up with as a preliminary layout. Finkel and Williams would be putting together, interior design and exterior design for the building as well to meet all the planning and zoning requirements within the city. And this would also house the utilities admin staff, utilities manager, myself, and staff engineer, engineering tech, and our newest position, the asset management coordinator position. So it's a little bit about that picture and why there's 2 different colors being shown. A lot of our equipment is also stored outside at this time. So wear and tear on hydraulic hoses from UV and all of that. We're looking to try and get that inside, or at least under a canopy. So what staff is recommending is Utility Advisory Commission to provide the city council with a recommendation to the city council for award of the Progressive Design Build Phase 1 contract to Lloyd Builders and Finkel Williams Architect for the amount of $180,500. If we have any questions, we can.
Have any questions?
I did have just kind of a point of clarification. It talks about phase 1 design proposal, and then it also talks about phase 2 design proposal, and then
In the scope of work?
Under the background information for so not in the scope of work from Lloyd, but in the briefing item from city staff, and then it talks about phase 1 and 2 simultaneous design 160,500 or 160,500 with a savings of 61,000. I wasn't quite sure. Are we going with the phase 1 and 2 simultaneous designs in this proposal, or is it just the phase 1 design proposal?
The phase 1 and 2.
Okay, so that
So that's how we come up with the 180.
it looked like the math was
5.
written that way. I was just asking for clarification.
So the staff report is written as phase 1. That's the actual contract. Phase 1 is up to the general or to the guaranteed maximum price. That's when we enter in phase 2 of the design build contract,
Okay.
or we have the option to not move forward if something comes up that we can't afford it, we can't do something because of the airport commission or something like that out of the blue comes up. Then at that point, at the end of this phase 1 design, is where they will give us a proposal for the guaranteed maximum price of constructing the project. We're moving forward with the design of phase 1 and 2 in the scope of work so that we have an idea of what it's actually gonna take.
To ensure that we're not tacking on after the fact. It's designed as a cohesive design.
Correct.
That we
So
can-
all the electric will be sized for both phase 1 and 2, all of the backup power, all of that stuff will be in place if we choose to only move forward with the construction of phase 1. But if the
Our
prices
current-
come back and all of that come good, then we'll have the choice to, do we go forward with phase 1? Because we all know 2 years from now, if we decide to do phase 2, it's probably gonna cost quite a bit more money. So we're trying to make sure that we have a design for the total site completed and know all of what needs to go on and have it sized appropriate so that we can move forward in a manner that is best fitting to the city's budget.
And phase 2, so the current thought process is we'll do phase 1 and 2 design build together. And if we need to, we can take out part of it. Phase 1 and 2 together would then encompass all of the utility staff, allowing us to vacate that other property.
Correct.
If we did not move forward with phase 2, we'd keep that other property until such time as we figure out what to do.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay, so then new business item 2 should actually, lots of words, design, build, phase 1 and 2.
Well, the contractual part is just called phase 1. That's kind of, the scope of work has phase 1 and 2. I guess the terminology is a little confusing, but
I just wanna make
we're
sure
entering
that
we're entering phase 1 of the design build contract. The design build phase 2 is the guaranteed maximum price construction contract.
Okay.
So the scope of the work is just for the engineering, site prep, utilities and all of that.
Got it.
It's just the difference of words used in Exhibit A and Exhibit B is the actual contract language that refers to phase one. Because that caught me up there too.
In this, obviously, we're going into the design phase, nothing's done that, but this preliminary sketch that we're looking at, in theory, this new building, whether we do phase one or phase one and two at the same time, will accommodate future growth of the departments as well?
Yes.
Okay.
We've actually included an area for possibility of having utility billing over there, or just growth of our staff. But the water meters will also move over to this location as well, the water meter technicians.
Okay.
And then I noticed this was included, I believe, in the long-term CIP as something that we wanted to do. What are we generally looking at for the next phase of the budget? This is the 100 and whatever thousand now.
This is the design portion, so then
Correct.
the,
What
the
are we
construction,
anticipating the cost might be?
that is a bit to be determined, but we went through a preliminary design of facility in 2018, 2020 with GBA, and they had a range between 2.3 and 2.6 million for construction of a site that could handle everybody.
So we should assume probably 20% increase in costs since 2020 on top of that.
All three?
Well, the buildings that they were proposing were a bit on the higher end. We're looking more of a steel or post, building, not getting into the fancy floor to ceiling windows and
I love it.
skylights and all of that stuff.
I did notice it said, basically pre-engineered steel buildings. So
Correct.
we would use standard dimensions, so we're not having to special order things. It would be, and that would allow the efficiency.
Yeah, we're not looking for epoxied floors and throughout the whole garage and all of that. I mean, we want to try and keep it, nice but minimalist.
Are there any other questions? I'll entertain a motion to recommend to the city council to award a progressive design build phase one contract for the Gardner Utilities Building Project number WW8002 to Lloyd Builders, Inc. and Finkel Williams Architecture, not to exceed the budgeted $180,500.
So moved.
Second?
I have a motion from Stauffer, seconded by Augustine. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. And we'll move on to discussion items.
So we have the APPA reliability indexes. The May numbers may be, that's a draft number. We still have a few events, so we were not able to put it in the APPA system because it happened yesterday. But our year-to-date numbers, they look very good. We received an award from APPA for last year CAIDI number, and the award will be presented to Bruce Baldwin on Monday. So that's a accomplishment for the electric distribution team.
Please extend our congratulations to him.
Okay. Any questions on the reliability indexes? Okay.
I don't think I
Then during the last meeting, Chairman Coleman requested a report to see the, I think that's on the, it's on the last page of your packet. So I get this report every month, but one of the commission recommended, suggested doing it quarterly. So this is the first quarter 2023 report. And the report has revenues, expenses, capital improvement, debt service, transfers, then the total expenses, net income. And on the last row, you have your fund balance, which is what it was requested. So you will see that number dropping for within the next 2-3 years.
So in the first quarter, the reserve actually increased by $301,000.
Correct.
What is the, under expenses, the transfers for $893,000? What is that number?
That's, we have to pay I guess the name is a pilot. So we transfer monies from utilities to the general fund. So that's that number right there.
And it was for what now?
They call it a pilot. What is it? In lieu of, so we transfer a percentage of our revenues to the general fund for the administration support they provide to the utilities, electric utilities. That's the same for water and wastewater funds.
And who determines this percentage?
I think it's, I believe it's a set percentage. It was determined by finance before I got here.
By finance?
Finance department.
Has it changed since you've been here?
I think the percentage is still the same.
It has been the same? So in other words, the cost of admin services hasn't increased.
Yeah, but it's based on your revenues, so that's gonna
So it's,
vary.
it was enough to cover the revenues based on the increase in revenues?
Correct.
Okay.
So if the revenues decrease, that number is gonna decrease.
Any questions?
So essentially, just for my edification, the transfers there is, utilities is a department of the city.
Correct.
We run it as its own budgeted item, and so we're accounting for city services that are then provided to the department of the city, which is the utilities.
Correct.
And that's what this is doing, is trying to keep those pools of money separate. And so we're saying, okay, city, you provided this to the utilities, now we're moving this over to cover that out of the electric fund balance. Is that a correct understanding of that housekeeping item, or?
No, that's correct, but the percentage, I believe, is based on the revenue that comes in.
And
Thank you.
it covers the administrative costs furnished to the utilities department. No other questions?
So is this something that's what you were looking for,
This is exactly what I was
Chairman?
looking for.
So it will be updated every quarter, so the next one will be by July. Yep. So the next quarter will be presented in July.
It will, in July?
April, May, June for the July quarter.
And you're-
So, correct.
Perfect.
July, maybe August, if they have the numbers back in July.
Okay.
So then I don't have any more questions specifically to this item, but just kind of circling back to my question from previously, as far as like the long-term forecast of is having the generation capacity to essentially air gap ourselves from the grid if the need were to arise. You're saying we're having a more comprehensive study of the long-term, another master plan study essentially being completed that will be presented. In that, will there be kind of, like in the other master plans, it says scenario 1, the city asked us to look at, here's what it is, here's scenario 2, here's scenario 3, and then here's our recommendation as the engineering firm that's looking at this thing for the various scenarios. Is that one of the options that's included in those potential scenarios?
So regarding, I need to put together a request for proposal for the master plan. Hopefully I'll get it done by the end of, getting something by the end of June, July, then I can present to the UAC. The original master plan was looking at the transmission and distribution side only. So we also have generation, so I'll include the generation portion as part of the master plan.
As something that we can look at, like
Correct.
option 1 is X percentage of generation capacity, option 2 is 100% generation capacity based off of forecasted growth, et cetera. That kind of terminology that we're looking at.
That's what would be added, yes.
I would definitely appreciate being able to see that. I know it takes time, so the RFP would be for
A master
the firm
plan,
that would then conduct the master plan study, which would then take what, 18
probably
months?
takes, shouldn't take that long, maybe 6 to 12 months.
Okay, so we would be looking at approximately this time next year, having
Correct.
those numbers for us.
Yep.
I would definitely appreciate seeing that particular aspect built into the master plan study of what does it look like if we have 100% generation capacity, what are the other options for the cost-benefit analysis, as far as, like you said, taking these offline could cost us $70,000 a month. What does that kind of things, what are our options moving forward long-term for that?
Yeah, that will be included.
Awesome, thank you.
I don't have anything else, any other questions?
Was the INI study completed or terminated?
It's still undergoing. We're negotiating a new contract with Trek to move on to another phase of the project. The INI program will never be finished because we're always building more and we always need to repair existing
But it
lines.
is ongoing now.
Correct.
Okay. Was there a stop there for a while? A delay?
Yeah, I mean, there was some time where their contract ended and we lost staff that was running that. And then we're renegotiating the new contract with them and have ran into some issues around that we need to fix and do in-house. So that should be coming here too in the next couple months.
So we do have an INI process being put together as far as, if I remember reading the master plan recently, our system is fairly new-ish compared to systems in the region. So we don't have a significant amount of INI, but we're looking at what will that do moving forward. Is that what our new study is looking at, is as our system begins to age, we're looking at an increased INI?
We are looking at INI because the wastewater treatment plant is reaching capacity. That's why we started doing the INI program a couple years ago. The INI program was actually initially proposed back in the mid to late 90s and no one ever did anything. So we're moving forward with that because we want to save capacity at the plant. So Every time you repair a manhole that's leaking, you know, that's less water that Scott is treating out at the wastewater treatment plant. Our wastewater treatment plant fluctuates very drastically after a rain event.
Or a wet weather flow,
Yes.
which is fair, is, if I understand the industry correctly, is somewhat typical, but then we try to, with our I&I are we initiating an I&I program with the study as far as like moving forward as our infrastructure begins to age, as we're building a new additional capacity of our treatment, as we're looking at that as an option? Are we looking at it holistically of yes, we'd like to eliminate the additional flow into the system, but just as a best practices, are we looking at an I&I program in general?
We already have an I&I program in place. We have, I believe, $300,000 budgeted every year. Realistically, that's not enough money to actually put a large dent into the I&I that's at the plant. But that's what the discussions and the final number was that City Council was comfortable with spending on I&I. So part of the reason that we have to delay some stuff, because when we do a lining project, that project costs pretty much a whole year's budget, so then we have no design money to do anything. So there is times like that where it appears that we're not really doing anything, but we are constantly cameraing our sewer lines. When did we buy that camera?
2017.
And Gons just happened to ask a week or two ago, how many miles of lines have we cameraed? We cameraed 97 miles in that time, and that camera has been out of service for at least 6 months of that time, getting repairs and stuff done on that. So when we have a camera crew that is certified in NASCO training of manholes and pipes, and then they rate it, and then we map it. One of our former staff engineer was putting together a plan on how to make those repairs. We are mapping those as of now through Possum, and then that's a software that we use, and we review those videos, and then if it's an emergency, we just have line maintenance go in there and make a point repair or do a manhole repair. As part of the process, we replaced 97 manhole lids since we've started the I&I program. We've done smoke testing in 2 different phases of town to try and find private I&I. We did find some, but we didn't find as many as we thought in the older parts of town. But when you drive around in a rain event, you don't see any water coming to the curb line like it should. So then you gotta wonder, where is all that water going in those, newer neighborhoods, even though the sewers are not old and leaking. So that is part of a continuing effort that we'll be making as well.
With my limited knowledge of the subject, I know Johnson County Wastewater is nationally recognized as an organization that has pioneered the use of I&I projects and public-private partnerships for eliminating private I&I in their systems, and every dollar they invest saves them a significant amount of money down the line. And then it's just prioritizing those dollars, trying to put them in the budget. Is that something that would be helpful for us to, as a commission, revisit and bring back to the attention of City Council of maybe we should be prioritizing some budget light items here, because they do make a huge difference to our bottom line at the end of the day?
Currently, we have purchased flow meters that we have in our sewer system to track how much. We have a controlled area where we haven't done any repairs, and Trek performed the flow data in the original contract. We're currently collecting that data again in that control area, and then we're also collecting flow data in the area that we just lined a year and a half ago. So typically when you line it, then you come back and get flow, you know, the next spring after everything's kind of settled down to see kind of what you've eliminated from the system. And that's going to be part of Trek's contract coming up, that they review that data and give us an idea of what we eliminated out of that one area.
So then, moving forward,
Then we can kind of justify,
we can
we
say,
spent this much money and we saved this many gallons of water from going to the treatment plant.
so then we can use that hard number to make a proposal to city council, like, hey, our investments here are paying off.
Right,
Perhaps renewed interest in this area would be useful.
right.
Thank you.
You know, as a rule of thumb, and this is pretty gross, for every inch of water, we get about 1 million gallons of INI.
In our system as
System.
it stands today. Do we know how that compares to other utilities in similar scope and age as ours? Is there any organization out there that has those numbers that you can compare to? Similarly to what we did with the electric side of the
I'm not
utility?
sure if there's any standards for, maybe you can talk about Olathe maybe.
Every community has INI, no matter how much money they spend on INI. No, nothing's ever gonna be perfect. It depends on groundwater level. Groundwater level here in Gardner is high, compared to, say, most of Olathe. So that plays an effect as well. I mean, some of our pipes are buried below streams and creeks. So that doesn't help INI over time. That just makes it increase. So the more we proactively inspect our lines and do that, then we can set up projects to counteract that aging process.
I have a question then on the Kill Creek expansion project. Did you get are you done reviewing the RFQs that you received?
I think Jeff can give you an update on that one.
Yes, actually today we just Scott and myself and our staff engineer just visited Lawrence's Wakarusa wastewater treatment plant that's 6 years old. That has a similar design to our current plant, but adds additional treatment for phosphorus and nitrogen removals, in which we're going to get hit by KDHE and having stringent discharges of those two items into the creek. And we are working on negotiations with Crossland and Black and Veatch right now, to move forward with a phase 1 design build contract on that project as well. We're hoping that we'll have that for the July meeting,
Okay.
but they have to review the legal documents, contracts that we sent over, because we wanted to keep it, again, the same as what we've used on the Hillsdale Water Treatment Plant expansion project.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone have any other questions?
And we're looking for similar to the item 2 that we had. We're looking at a similar, like we did with Hillsdale, a similar structure to the way that these design build, and then the guaranteed maximum package.
Yep.
Construction. I forget what it's called.
Guaranteed maximum price contract.
So we're looking at a similar process for this.
Correct.
Awesome.
Any other questions for staff?
And the design build process runs a lot smoother for large projects of that type, buildings and treatment plants. That's a very good process. We ran that with Burns and McDonald and CAS for the Hillsdale Water Treatment Plant project, and it was a very successful project.
It seems to becoming, it seems like it is quickly becoming the industry standard.
Correct, and a lot of the reason is because you basically get a guaranteed maximum price for construction at 30% design. So you're not designing the project all the way to 100%, then advertising all these different components to contractors to then bid on. So you're eliminating that section, but then it also allows you to order like a generator that might take you 52 weeks to get at this time earlier in the project, so that it's going to be there earlier. And those are the things that we're going to be looking at as well in all of those design projects, is at what point can we get some of these items out for purchase.
Thank you. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So motion.
I'll second.
Motion made by Stoffer, seconded by Augustine to adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Meeting adjourned.